Hello, Michelle Glass here. Welcome to another Chapter 6 video. We've talked about the structures of the skeletal system as including bone, and we've talked about compact bone versus spongy bone, and we looked at the kind of gross anatomy of the bone, but we haven't really talked about well, what exactly is bone. So when we talk about osseous tissue or bone, what we're really talking about, this is a connective tissue. And so we're going to see a group of specialized cells, remember, in a ground matrix. In a matrix. And so the matrix is something that's being secreted by the cells. And the matrix is probably the thing that we're most familiar with because this is that piece that gets left over as part of the remains of a vertebrate animal, an animal with a skeletal system. And when we talk about the matrix, I like to think about it as having like two major components. One is collagen fiber, and collagen fiber, remember, is a protein. And this protein is going to allow the skeleton to be very flexible. Now, we're not expecting a super rubbery skeleton here, right? What we mean by flexible is there's a little bit of give, there's a little bit of bending that can happen in the bone without it shattering and breaking. Okay. And then the other major component we call hydroxyapatite crystals. This is the mineral component. And when we talk about hydroxyapatite crystals, this is including calcium phosphate and calcium carbonate. That's where we talk about the calcium component to our bone. But also we're going to get some magnesium. We can also have some fluoride. We can also have some hydroxide, and we can also have some sulfite mixed in with that. So when we talk about hydroxyapatite crystals, we're mostly talking about calcium phosphate and calcium carbonate with these other components as well. And it's the mineral component then is the hydroxyapatite crystals, it's the calcium phosphate and calcium carbonate that make the skeleton hard. So it's this beautiful combination that allows us to have a hard skeleton, but not one that shatters easily. So the collagen fiber gives us a little bit of flexibility so we can bend without breaking, but the hydroxyapatite crystals then makes that framework very hard and stable. When we talk about our specialized cells, we're going to have 4 important bone cells. So I want to start out with what's called the osteogenic cell. Then we'll talk about the osteoblast. And then we'll talk about the osteocyte. Now notice that I've linked these together with an arrow and I've indicated the directionality. So we start with the osteogenic cell because this is our stem cell. Stem cells, remember, are mitotically active. So this means the osteogenic cell is going to do mitosis and the daughter cell will be the osteoblast. So the osteogenic cell is going to do mitosis and produce the osteoblast. It's going to be located in the periosteum, and the endosteum. Periosteum, remember, is that outer layer, and endosteum is that innermost layer. Now, the osteogenic cell, remember, divides and gives rise to osteoblast. So what is the osteoblast? This is the cell that's going to form new bone. So anytime we have that blast ending, we have a cell that's making something. We had fibroblasts when we talk about the integumentary system as a begin laying down collagen fibers. And here we see osteoblasts are forming that new bone. They're actually going to secrete that bony matrix that we talked about, meaning it's releasing, laying down both the collagen fiber and then also calcifying those fibers to make that matrix. Now we're going to see osteoblasts in both the periosteum and endosteum and in developing bone. Because as the osteoblast does its job, it's actually surrounding itself more and more with matrix. And once we have that matrix there, we have bony matrix, then we have bone. And then we're going to see it's the osteocyte that's going to be the mature bone cell. And so this is the most abundant, because when we talk about the skeleton, we're thinking about it as mostly being bone tissue. And so the osteocyte is the bone cell. Its job is going to be to maintain, let's do that, maintain matrix. So I'm going to draw another arrow to show the osteocyte is maintaining that matrix. It's maintaining that mineral composition specifically. So maybe let's take an arrow over specifically to the hydroxyapatite crystals. Now remember that the osteocytes are located in those little packets called lacunae, which is the space for that cell inside that bony matrix. So the osteogenic cell, the osteoblast, and the osteocyte are all part of the same cell lineage. Osteogenic cells, osteoblasts, and osteocytes are all part of the same cell lineage. When an osteogenic cell divides, it forms an osteoblast. The osteoblast is defined as the cell that's releasing, secreting that matrix. And once that osteoblast is completely surrounded by matrix and its job changes to maintaining the matrix, then its name changes too. When its job changes, its name changes, and we call it an osteocyte. Remember, there are actually 4 types of cells in the bone. And so the next type of cell to mention is called the osteoclast. Now, I like to imagine my osteoclast looking sort of like a Pac-Man with teeth, because these cells are actually derived from macrophages, which are big phagocytic cells. And so osteoclasts have the job of dissolving unneeded, damaged, or old bone. So it's going to be also important in, we can call it breaks down bone, and releases calcium. We'll see this located on bone surfaces. They have to be present where bone is present. They have to be present where bone is present. Typically we see osteoblast activity is equal to osteoclast activity. So even though we have a regular dissolving and breaking down of unneeded, damaged, or old bone, we also have this activity of constantly making new matrix, right? So there's this important relationship between the osteoblast and the osteoclast. So I'm going to give it a little asterisk beside osteoblast and an asterisk beside osteoclast. And I'm going to mention that we're going to see them involved in both modeling, remodeling. We'll define these terms a little bit later. And calcium ion regulation. All right, that's it for this one. As always, take care of yourselves and each other and stay tuned for the next episode.